If you're in the US and retiring with a pension, you probably think you're ahead of the game. And in many ways you are. A pension feels like winning the retirement lottery. Guaranteed income every month for life. No market guessing, no watching the news with a knot in your stomach. Just money showing up whether you feel productive or not. And yet, this is the part nobody warns you about. The pension doesn't solve everything. In fact, sometimes it creates a different kind of confusion, a quieter kind, one that sneaks up on you after the congratulations fade and the cake is gone and your coworkers stop emailing you. Because once the pension starts, a strange question appears in your mind that you didn't expect to feel so heavy. Is this it? I don't mean financially, at least not at first. I mean structurally, emotionally, psychologically. You go from decades of earning to decades of receiving, from building to maintaining, from being rewarded for effort to being paid simply for existing. And while that sounds amazing on paper, your nervous system doesn't automatically understand how to live inside that reality. Most people with pensions assume retirement will be easier for them than for everyone else. And again, in many ways it is. But what I've learned is that having a pension can actually delay some of the important questions you still need to ask. Because the money shows up, you don't feel the urgency to examine how your life is changing underneath it. So let's talk honestly about this. If you're retiring with a pension in the U.S., you need to understand what that pension really is and what it is not. A pension is income. It is not freedom by default. It is not peace of mind by default. And it is definitely not a complete retirement plan by itself. The first thing that catches people off guard is how the pension immediately becomes their identity anchor. For years, your job defined you. Then suddenly your pension does. You start thinking in terms of, I get this much per month, instead of, I make this much per year. And slowly, almost invisibly, your world shrinks to that number. You begin filtering decisions through it. Can we travel? Can we help the kids? Can we fix the house? Can we say yes without checking first? The pension becomes both a comfort and a ceiling. And if you're not careful, you start living your life in a way that protects the pension rather than supports the life you actually want to live. Another thing nobody prepares you for is how static a pension feels. When you were working, income moved, raises happened, bonuses appeared, promotions changed the math. With a pension, the number is largely fixed. Yes, some have cost of living adjustments, but many don't. And even when they do, they often lag behind real life. Groceries don't care that your pension stayed the same. Property taxes don't care. Health care definitely doesn't care. And suddenly, even with guaranteed income, you feel this subtle pressure to be careful all the time. Not because you're irresponsible, but because you understand that your income isn't flexible anymore. That realization alone creates a low-level anxiety that a lot of pensioners don't talk about. They feel like they should be grateful, so they don't complain. They feel lucky compared to others, so they keep quiet. But inside, they're constantly doing mental math, quietly negotiating with themselves about what's allowed and what isn't. Then there's the timing shock. When you retire with a pension, the transition often happens quickly. One day you're working, the next day you're done. There's no gradual fade out, no slow shift. You go from structured days to completely unstructured ones almost overnight, and the pension shows up whether you've figured out how to live that life or not. At first, it feels incredible. Sleeping in, no emails, no deadlines, no meetings. But after a few weeks, something odd happens. You realize that the structure work provided was doing more for you than you thought. It told you when to wake up, when to rest, when to feel accomplished, when to stop. Without that structure, days can blur together. And when days blur, time starts feeling strange. Some people describe it as floating, others describe it as drifting, and a lot of pension retirees quietly ask themselves why they don't feel as happy as they thought they would. This isn't because something is wrong with you. It's because pensions solve the money problem, not the meaning problem. And the meaning problem doesn't announce itself loudly. It whispers. It shows up as boredom or restlessness or guilt for not doing enough, even though you've earned the right to rest.
There's also the comparison trap. If you're retiring with the pension in the U.S., chances are you know people who don't have one. Friends, siblings, coworkers. And that comparison can mess with your head. You feel like you shouldn't worry, like you shouldn't want more, like you should just be content. But contentment doesn't come from suppressing questions. It comes from answering them honestly. And one of the most important questions you need to ask yourself early in pension retirement is this: what role do I want money to play in my life now? Not how much I get, not how secure it is, but what is money supposed to enable for me at this stage? Because if you don't define that, the pension quietly becomes the boss you thought you retired from. And here's the final thing I want to say before we continue. A pension is an incredible foundation, truly, but foundations are meant to support something built on top of them, not to be the entire structure. If you rely on the pension alone to carry every part of your retirement, you may find yourself safe but small, stable but constrained, comfortable but cautious in ways you didn't expect. Once the pension starts and the initial excitement fades, most retirees fall into patterns without realizing it. Not because they're careless, but because humans crave stability, and the pension feels like the safest thing in the room, so behavior quietly bends around it. You start organizing your life to avoid disturbing the pension rhythm. Monthly expenses get locked in, spending becomes predictable, decisions get smaller. You hesitate more often, not because you can't afford something, but because you don't want to regret it later. The fear isn't running out tomorrow. The fear is running out slowly. This is where many pension retirees unknowingly trade flexibility for comfort. At first, it looks responsible. You budget carefully, you avoid risk, you tell yourself, I don't need much anymore. And maybe that's true, but over time, this mindset can shrink your world more than necessary. You stop asking what's possible and start asking what's safe. The problem isn't the pension. The problem is letting it become the ceiling instead of the floor. One of the biggest mental shifts retirees struggle with is moving from accumulation to utilization. During your working years, every decision was about building income, savings, career momentum. In retirement, especially with a pension, the goal changes. Now it's about designing a life that your money serves, not protecting the money at the cost of the life. But nobody teaches you how to make that shift. So people default to what feels logical: protect the pension, minimize spending, avoid complexity. And slowly the days become quieter, safer, less demanding. And while that sounds peaceful, many retirees eventually feel understimulated mentally and emotionally. Another challenge pension retirees face is overestimating certainty. Yes, the pension is guaranteed, but life isn't. Health changes, family needs change, inflation changes everything. And when all your confidence is tied to one income stream, even a reliable one, it creates fragility you don't notice at first. This is why many pension retirees feel uneasy during economic headlines, even when those headlines don't directly affect their pension. It's not about logic, it's about dependence. When one source supports everything, any uncertainty feels personal. There's also a subtle loss of agency that can creep in. When you were working, income was something you influenced. You showed up, you performed, you were rewarded. In retirement, the pension arrives regardless of your actions. Again, that sounds ideal, but over time it can disconnect effort from reward. Some retirees feel strangely irrelevant, as if their contributions no longer matter. That feeling has nothing to do with laziness. It has everything to do with purpose.
Humans are wired to feel useful, and when usefulness disappears overnight, the brain goes looking for it elsewhere. Sometimes it finds it in my hobbies, sometimes in the family, sometimes it doesn't find it at all. And when that happens, even a comfortable pension retirement can feel hollow.
Another issue many U.S. pension retirees don't anticipate is decision fatigue. Without the structure of work, every day becomes a blank slate. What time do you wake up? What do you do today? What matters now? At first, freedom feels exciting. Later, it can feel exhausting. Too many open-ended days can drain energy instead of restoring it. This is why some retirees feel tired even though they're resting more. And here's where things get important. The retirees who thrive with pensions aren't the ones who simply relax better. They're the ones who intentionally redesign their life around meaning, contribution, and controlled flexibility. They don't let the pension define their lifestyle. They use it to support one. They create structure by choice. They create purpose by design. They create financial flexibility beyond the pension, not because they're afraid, but because they want options. This doesn't mean chasing risk. It means understanding that security and growth are not opposites. You can respect the pension while still building systems around it that give you breathing room. Because the real danger isn't running out of money, it's running out of engagement. And once disengagement settles in, it's very hard to reverse.
By the time most pension retirees realize something feels off, the habits are already formed. The days are quieter, the calendar is emptier, the pension is working exactly as promised, and yet life feels narrower than expected. Not bad, just smaller. The retirees who avoid this don't do anything dramatic. They don't chase excitement. They don't gamble with their security. They simply understand one core truth early on. Retirement still requires design. They stop thinking of the pension as the plan and start treating it as the base layer, the floor that holds everything up. Once that shift happens, everything else changes. Instead of asking, "How do I protect my pension?" they ask, "How do I build a life on top of it?" This is where flexibility comes back. Thriving pension retirees create additional income streams not out of fear, but out of choice. Sometimes it's light consulting. Sometimes it's part-time work they actually enjoy. Sometimes it's rental income, dividends, or small business involvement. The amount often isn't huge, but the psychological impact is. Even a modest second income changes how decisions feel. Suddenly, the pension isn't carrying the entire emotional weight of your life. It's not responsible for every want, every emergency, every dream. It does its job quietly in the background, while you regain a sense of agency in the foreground. That sense of agency matters more than most people realize. When you earn even a small amount by choice, your brain reconnects effort with reward. You feel useful again, capable, relevant, not because you need the money, but because you want the engagement. Another thing successful pension retirees do differently is they intentionally rebuild structure. Not rigid schedules, not alarms and meetings, but gentle structure, anchors in the day, reasons to wake up, things that expect them to show up. It might be volunteering, coaching, teaching, mentoring, community involvement, something that creates rhythm. Structure gives time shape. Shape gives days meaning. Without it, time dissolves, and when time dissolves, so does motivation. They also get honest about spending. Instead of defaulting to caution, they align spending with values. They ask, what actually improves my life now? And then they fund those things without guilt. Travel, experiences, health, comfort, relationships. They don't waste money, but they don't hoard it either. Because hoarding creates fear. Intentional spending creates confidence. One of the biggest mindset upgrades pension retirees make is accepting that uncertainty doesn't disappear just because income is guaranteed. Life will still change, bodies will change, priorities will change, and flexibility, not certainty, is what makes those changes manageable. This is why diversification matters, even in retirement. Not just financial diversification, but identity diversification. You are not just a pension recipient. You are a person with skills, experience, perspective, and value far beyond a monthly deposit. The retirees who feel most at peace understand this deeply. They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't cling. They stay curious. They stay involved. They stay open. And over time, they realize something surprising. Retirement wasn't the ending they feared or the vacation they imagined. It was a transition into a different kind of responsibility. The responsibility to design a life that feels full, not just safe. A pension gives you security. What you build around it gives you freedom. That's the difference. And if you recognize yourself anywhere in this, feeling grateful but restless, secure but constrained, know this: nothing is wrong with you. You're simply at the stage where comfort alone is no longer enough. Design comes next.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future videos. See you in the next one.